Yeah, I think just some preparation work. Maybe we need to start recording the. Oh, yeah, it's on. Maybe after we start recording the whole session, we could start right now. Yeah. Then
Okay.
here we go.
All right, let's do it. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
We're good to go, Chris?
Yeah, man. I will start. Hi guys. This is Chris from Dora Hacks, and today we are very happy to have Daniel Gamboa from Figment today, and he will sharing learn and build on Polygon with Figment learns 101 pathway workshop with us. And before Daniel start, let me briefly introduce the background of the workshop. Right now, Dora Hacks and Polygon are co-hosting the Polygon-Grants hackathon. You might not know this, but it is actually the very first global Polygon-centric hackathon. And also, it is the first Polygon quadratic funding grant where we could use Matic token as the main voting and donation currency. We're really looking forward to all the amazing new projects coming on the Polygon network. So without further ado, let's welcome Daniel to start his workshop. And remember, guys, if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to ask in our YouTube and Bilibili chat room. And thanks for joining us today, Daniel. Feel free to begin when you are ready.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Really appreciate it. Hey, everyone. I'm a software engineer here at Figment. My name's Daniel. A little background on me. I've actually spent a lot of time building in different spaces. So I spent some time in nanomaterials, M&A, energy, but I kept Figment as fast as I could and into the blockchain space. I love it here. I think the internet's expansion from this sort of communication medium into this like two-way economic channel is probably the biggest development happening in the world right now. So it's a lot of fun to help build it, and hopefully with this, I can give you a little bit of taste of what we're doing at Figment. So I think the goal of the session is really to introduce you to Learn, which is this free learning platform that we're building at Figment. And in particular, to some of the learning resources that we've built to get you ramped up into building and into the Polygon space. And then in the meantime, I'll also tell you a little bit about Figment and then kick off the pathway so you guys can actually see the specific steps that we've put together as a tutorial for you. And we'll complete the first couple of them together. So the first question I want to answer is really kind of what is Figment? What do we do? So our mission at Figment is to build a better internet where individuals and companies are in complete control of how they interact and how they exchange value online. So that really means sort of working towards Web3 and enhancing that community as much as possible and then kind of help it advance. And we think that's the future. We think that future is a multi-chain future. And we think that Polygon has a massive role to play to scale and connect that future. So we have three kind of core businesses. We work a lot on the infrastructure side, building and running staking nodes for a big portfolio of proof of stake blockchains. We build middleware, and so I'll show you actually one of those products here in a minute called Data Hub. But basically, it's a way for us to help developers like you and help token holders interact with the blockchain world and abstract some of the complexity underlying the infrastructure. And then we build educational resources like Learn, like what we're going to do today to help Web3 builders become master developers. And so our mission here at Learn is to just help developers master Web3 faster. So with that in mind, why don't I share my screen? Let me do this here. Okay, and I'll move this out of the way. All right, cool. So I think you can see my screen now. So let's do this. So let me introduce you first to the Learn site. So the Learn site, you can find it at learn.figment.io. And what you're going to find there, and let me expand this up, is you're going to find this landing page that has a bunch of different protocols. You can see the Polygon protocol that we'll dive into here in a second. But really, it's a website and it's a resource for you to go in and try to like scaffold your way into a lot of these protocols and learn how to build for them. And so there's not a ton of technical sophistication required here. I mean, if you know JavaScript, you can dive into these things. You don't have to learn a bunch of Web2 systems to kind of be very proficient in this world. And so what you'll find is you can go up here and you can check out all the different protocols. You can check out pathways, which are sort of like 101 for each protocol on how to build. And then you can have specific tutorials that have been developed by the community. And we'll dive into some of those specifics here in a minute on the Polygon blockchain. We have some contests that I'll hopefully get to at the end that we're going to be launching. And then we've got our Discord channel here linked so that, you know, in the event that you've got additional questions, or if you run into anything where you get stuck as you're going through some of these tutorials or some of these pathways, then you can reach out to us. We have over 3,000 developers in there. 400 of us are really active every day. And so you're bound to find somebody to help you out. We're all over the world. So it's really kind of a 24/7 channel for you to go get help. So let's look at the Polygon pathway here. And so, or the Polygon page. Every single protocol has a page like this. You land in here, you've got the protocol at the top, and then you've got a brief description. And so, as some of you guys probably know, Polygon is this way to sort of take the best things of the Ethereum blockchain, the community, the security, and really try to enhance it and scale it, and really sort of build additional chains to sort of help solve some of the issues that Ethereum has had over the years, and really sort of make that ecosystem that much more robust. And so Polygon is actively doing that. It's doing that today. And we're kind of going to show you a little bit more of that, but really kind of how to build for that. So you've got this brief introduction here that you can read. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll notice that we sort of point you to a couple of resources for where to start, the pathway that we're about to dive into, but also these sort of conceptual resources for you to dive into. What is Polygon? How does it work? You know, really kind of start building that mental model and that scaffold of how does this stuff work, and how can I build with it? Like what are the use cases? How do I actually get started? And how do I sort of over time become a really awesome developer in the system? And then once you've completed this pathway and maybe you read some of these resources, we've also gotten the community to contribute some tutorials for us. And so what you can do is you can get even more specific with sort of the verticals that you start tackling and how you start building and what kind of applications you start developing and focusing on. And so down here, there's a couple of different options. And then this really will be sort of this launch pad for you after you complete this stuff to really sort of go into the space and start putting together your own projects and start sort of building in public and showing people off what you built, and hopefully build something really, really cool. And so hopefully we're here along the way to kind of support that growth for you. So with that as a preface, when we get started on the pathway, so when you click on the pathway, you'll see up here Polygon 101. You'll see down here the key steps for the pathway. You'll see that we've designated it as a beginner pathway, and it's really the stack for this pathway is React, Truffle, and Solidity. But really, if you know JavaScript and maybe you've built a page with some components, or you've done Node on the back end and sort of interacted with an API, that's really all the context you need to dive into this and have it be a very productive learning experience for you. And so, starting off with the introduction. The first thing that we do is sort of try to introduce you conceptually to what you're going to be looking at and some of the key concepts in the Polygon ecosystem. So you can really get your footing and get your feet wet on what some of these things that are going to come up in some of the later steps are. And so you'll find up here, Polygon's a protocol and a framework for building and connecting Ethereum compatible blockchain networks. So that's kind of the first snapshot that you can start to get that sense of, okay, I'm mapping this new territory. I'm getting familiar with where we're going. And then you kind of start diving into this text and you realize, okay, well, this is interesting. It's designed to interoperate with and solve some of Ethereum's limitations, like we talked about earlier with scaling and some of the transaction throughput. You can keep reading this. I'll let you do this on your own when you actually do the pathway. So I won't actually read all of this in the interest of time. There's some really cool links I want to point out. In particular, you know, if you've got some interest on the technical side as to how some of these things are architected, you can dive into some of these links on zero knowledge proofs and optimistic rollups and some of those rabbit holes that are really interesting, and you can probably spend a whole day researching. But the ones that I really want to highlight is, first of all, this one. So we've actually linked to this page that it's almost like this library of cool projects that have been built on top of Polygon. And I really would encourage you, after you complete the pathway and you kind of get a sense for how Polygon works, to dive into this. Because you can see some of the really cool things that have been built on top of the ecosystem. In particular, some of you guys might be familiar with Aave, the DeFi protocol. There's a Aave on Polygon. There's QuickSwap, which is basically a Uniswap clone that's built on top of Polygon. It's really fascinating. And if you've got any experience with Uniswap, you're going to love this one. And then Atari, who recently announced a partnership with Polygon for their NFT platform. And so some really cool stuff. Really, really encourage you to check that out after you've done the pathway, so you've got some context. And then finally, these three links right here will also help orient you a little bit. So when you start building for Polygon, you'll become really familiar with this wallet.matic.network link. So if you click here, it's basically the way that you're going to interface between Ethereum and Polygon in terms of transferring assets from one to the other. Here's the docs. So this foreknowledge link is linking you to the Polygon docs. Highly encourage you to look at that at some point. And then here's the faucet. So if you're if you're not familiar with what a faucet is, you in all these ecosystems, you usually have a test net and a main net. Test net is basically like your development environment. Main net is basically your production environment. And so this link allows you to get some tokens for the test net, which means that on the test net, you're basically deploying your resources, your smart contracts, your programs, and basically testing them without necessarily having to pay for anything, right? Like there's no tokens, there's no real exchange of value, but you do still, in order to simulate the real function of the mainnet, you will need tokens, and the transactions will have tokens going back and forth. And so, so the way to do that is just using a faucet. You get some pseudo tokens into your account, and then you can interact with those smart contracts and sort of pretend like the smart contract's already deployed, so you can really kind of debug and test. So so with that as some context, let's actually dive into code here. So let me shrink this slightly. And the first thing you're going to want to do is, as you set up your project, we've got here these 4 key dependencies that you're going to want to make sure that you have. And so I'll just go through with you and check on those. So do I have get? I have get. Do I have node? I have node. You'll notice here that we're encouraging you to use 14.17. If you're not familiar with the Node version manager, definitely install that. I bet a lot of you guys have a different version of Node. If you have MVM installed, you can just change what node you're actually running with that command, and then it'll tell you, you're now using it. Of course, we were using it before, but if I had been using maybe, 14.15, it would have changed it. So we're good to go there. I can confirm that I have Yarn. That's all good. And then you've got to have MetaMask, which is a browser extension for a wallet. And so you see that I've got that installed here. We'll dive a little bit more into MetaMask in just a second, literally in 30 seconds or so, but just make sure you have that installed. So we can now move on to the next step. So we've created an app for you called Learn Web3 Dapp. And what it is effectively a Next.js React app that you're going to download, and it's going to give you access to a very simple front end for you to go step by step into this tutorial. The tutorial itself is all about trying to get you to better understand how to interact with the Polygon protocol. And so what we've done is that we've built this whole app, and we've left open sort of key functions for you to implement yourself that'll really sort of start introducing some of those topics on how to interact with Polygon. And so we're going to just copy this. We're going to get clone it, and then we're going to CD into that directory. So I'll start typing that here. Boom, we're there. Then we're going to run yarn so we can install dependencies. So while that's installing, let me scroll down here. And the first thing you'll see on the setup step is really these sort of disclaimers. And the first one, we're really encouraging that if you use MetaMask as a hot wallet, so in other words, if you keep your crypto assets on a MetaMask wallet and all your tokens are in there and your NFTs and things like that, we strongly recommend that you set up a new wallet to go through these tutorials. Now, there's really nothing in here that should result in issues in terms of the specific steps, but you never know what you might end up pushing to GitHub. You might have, you might end up putting your recovery phrase in one of your directories and that gets pushed up. If you have enough assets in your wallet, you definitely want to make sure that you protect that. As we say, not your keys, not your crypto, which also means you've got the responsibility to protect your keys. And so, we really, really recommend let's say you use Chrome and you've got MetaMask and that's your hot wallet, maybe use Brave for these pathways, or maybe try to use a different browser and reinstall MetaMask so that you can create a brand new wallet. You can't just create a new account because, if you look down here, I've got these 2 accounts. So if you've got multiple accounts, they're still linked to a single wallet. So just make sure that you protect your wallet, create a new account, then go through the pathways. The second disclaimer here is if you don't have MetaMask installed, then welcome. You're gonna probably use it a lot as you go through some of these tutorials. The first piece of advice we're gonna give you here is just make sure that you write down your secret recovery phrase. It's gonna be pretty crucial for you going forward, and protect that as well. That's kind of like the key if you switch computers or if you switch browsers. That's the key by which you can recover the account that you were using, in another system. But as I said before, it's also the key by which somebody could actually recover your assets and take them out of your wallet. So just make sure you protect that. Okay, with that out of the way, let's keep going. So let's add the Mumbai testnet here to MetaMask. So the way we do that is let me switch back to Ethereum mainnet. Normally, if you just installed MetaMask, you won't have the Mumbai testnet here. So you're going to click on custom RPC, and then we're going to fill in all of this. So Polygon Mumbai, we're going to say https://rpc mumbai.matic.vigil.com. Chain ID is 80,001. Matic is the token symbol. And then our Explorer URL is this down here, Mumbai Polygon-Grants.com. So you click save, and then you've got it. So now it's right there, it's added. It's the network that is active currently with this account. So we're good to go. So you see all those variables I pulled from right here. You even have a little visual that we provided just to kind of walk you through how to do that on your end. Once you have that set, now you need to set your API key. And so what we're telling you to do here is you can leverage Data Hub, which again is our infrastructure system that allows you, if you're sort of familiar with AWS or Heroku or things like that, it allows you to interact with these protocols, and it really sort of abstracts a lot of that complexity for you. And so super easy to use. You just click that link. If you're not already logged in because you don't have an account, all you have to do is create your account. Then you'll go into this Polygon page, this dashboard. All the keys are going to be by default blurred for you. So we're going to copy that. We're going to come back here. Then it tells us that we've got an environment file that we need to set, this .env.local. So let me show you over here. If we list all of the files that are in our directory here, you'll see that we've got this .env.example file. So when we copy that, you can safely assume that that's basically a file that we have set up for you so that you don't have to do it all from scratch yourself. Now let's open up VS Code. And let's look here at our .env. You'll notice that the .env.local by default is in our get-ignore already. So you don't have to worry about that. And you'll see that we've got a bunch of data in here. We've basically defined a bunch of the URLs that you'll be using throughout the course of the pathways. And then we've got these environment variables that are undefined at this point, which are all your API keys for the different protocols. So in this case, we're going to be doing the Polygon API key since we're doing the Polygon pathway. I'm going to go off screen for a second so I can paste my API key. I'm going to save. I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to bring it back. Cool. So we're done with that. And now we can start the server. So let's do that. Yarn dev. We're going to start the server. We're going to open that up and close Data Hub. And while that loads, this basically just tells you this is what it's going to look like. As soon as this is done loading, we're going to have a home page that has all the different protocols with the pathway steps. And so we will be clicking on the Polygon one, and then we can start the process. So let's move on to the next step, connect to Polygon. Let's see if this is downloaded. Not yet. Nope. Looks like it's there. So Polygon. That's going to load for a minute, and it's going to bring up our Polygon first step, the components associated with that first step. We can start looking at it here. Basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be connecting to Polygon using MetaMask and using this API called ethers.js. So this ethers.js is just a library. It's a JavaScript library that allows us to interact with different protocols, in this case, Polygon. And so the key things you have to know sort of going into this library, and it's all very well documented, so you can read the docs too, but you're going to have two key objects, the provider object and the signer object. You can think of provider as a way to interact with the blockchain without affecting its state. And so provider will just allow you to read data from the blockchain. And then the signer will actually allow through your wallet for you to sign transactions that'll alter that state and record things onto the blockchain and sort of interact with it. So let me look at this real quick. There it is. So this is the first component. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be activating this button. So when you click this button, it's going to tell you that you're connected to Polygon. And so right now it's saying not connected. So let's go ahead and implement that. So we'll go down here, and just to orient yourself, we've got the challenge up here. We're going to talk about the scenario in a second. We've got the snippet of code that we're going to be reviewing. We've got some resources down here, sort of walking you through how you might implement this. Then down here, I will just scroll just slightly, and you'll see the solution. We'll actually have the solution embedded in there. So the way we think about this is you probably should try to implement it on your own using these docs as your resources. If you get stuck, reach out on Discord and really sort of start building those relationships with other developers and try to figure it out. And ultimately, if you either can't figure it out or you're in a hurry and you're really in it for kind of exposure, feel free to look at the solution. We'll even provide, and I'll show you this in a minute, some context as to why the solution works. And so let's go ahead and get started. So in this scenario, you're a developer, you landed a sweet role, and you've been asked to show users of our decentralized app which network that they're connected to. And so we're pointing you here to this component. So let's go ahead and find that component, and it's called connect.tsx, and it's inside components, protocols, Polygon steps. So let's open that up. We see down here the code that matches this code. So we're going to be implementing the rest of this check connection function. And so it's an async function. It looks like we're missing some variables that have been set here as undefined. And so we probably just have to implement those so that we can actually tell our application what account and what network is connected. And presumably, once we do that, then the state of this will change and we'll see that it's connected. So in order to do that, you've got a couple of different resources here. So why don't we look at this first one? So we're going to need that Web3 provider. So we're going to need to instantiate that provider. It says here that in order to instantiate a provider, you just need this constructor for ethers providers Web3 provider. So let's go ahead and implement that. So new ethers.providers.web3 provider. And then it looks like we need something to pass into it. And what's interesting is if you look into this EIP 1193 provider, is that this is just like anything else in Ethereum, a description of some standard. And when you read the abstract of the standard, you can see historically that providers have been made available through this window.ethereum. So, think of the provider as MetaMask under the hood, giving us this API to be able to interact with networks. And so that API that it's given us is this window.ethereum object. And so let's go ahead and add that in. Window.ethereum. So we've got our Web3 provider. One of the things that we sort of left as an intuitive lip here in the tutorial is that you also need a signer, right? We talked a little bit up here about the concept of a signer. So we're gonna have to create a variable called signer, and that variable is gonna have to have something that sets based on the provider as a signer of the account that you're using here. So in this case, it would be this specific account that I'm using, this Polygon demo account. And so the way to do that, you can actually look at this Stack Overflow post. If you read through this, it'll sort of walk you through how to do that or how to do that based on the solution. But basically, you can see down here that to set a signer, you just need to grab your Web3 provider and you need to say get signer. You call that function and boom, you've got your signer. So now we're really close. So we've got two pieces of state that we need to set, address and network. And so in order to set the address, we've also provided some resources for you here for both the address and the network. But what's interesting is if you look at this one, this is all about kind of how to get the network. But you might think there's probably some sort of get address method in here somewhere. And when you start thinking about it, where might you get the address? If the address is associated with a signer, then it's probably going to be the signer.getAddress concept. And it looks here like it's returning a promise, so it's asynchronous. So we're going to do this. We're going to say await. We're going to say signer. We're going to say get address. We'll call that function. And there we have our signer. So the last thing we need to do is just set this variable network. And this one's a little bit more tricky, but we can look over here at that link that we had provided earlier. Let me see here. And we can say, okay, we'll get network somewhere in here. Here's get network. This is saying that by using ethers.providers.getNetwork, we can pass in some sort of network, which down here in the examples means the chain name or the chain ID, and we can get our network. And so the trickiest part here is going to be, well, how do we get that chain ID? And so you might think, well, there's probably some sort of get chain ID method in here somewhere. And sure enough, the first link is telling us that, sure, there's a signer.get chain ID. Again, it's asynchronous. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go back here twice and say, okay, well, it's ethers.providers.getNetwork. We're going to have to pass in that chain ID. So let's go forward and say, okay, we're going to need to say await signer.get chain ID. We're going to call that. And now it looks like we've got all the variables we need. So why don't we go test that? Why don't we test our connection? There you go. Connected to Matic Mum, which is the testnet for Polygon. So I'll pause there. I think we're at time, but let's see if there's any questions. What I'll do with this, guys, is I hope you get a chance to go check out the pathway itself, and you get to do all the other steps yourself. And certainly, if you have any issues or you have any questions or just want to jam with us, just hit us up on Discord, and happy to answer any questions. So with that, Chris, I don't know if there's any questions out there.
Hi. Yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing about this amazing session. And let me check if there's some question. Actually, I have questions for you. Uh,
Yeah.
so, so like, so what kind of the developers are you like looking forward to like build on Figment? Like
Yeah.
what
So
kind?
this is
Yeah, yeah.
yeah this is designed for any developers, and so you're talking specifically about the tutorials and the pathways. Like, what is the audience for this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the idea is for anybody who's familiar with the Web 2 stack, anybody who's been building applications on Web 2 with servers and databases and things like that, should be able to jump in this and just in a week or two, just be super proficient. But even anybody who's just a beginner, I think there's a ton of awesome learning materials. And you can probably skip a lot of the normal sort of server route and just come straight into the blockchain world and be highly productive. So really, anybody who's interested in building and writing software for blockchain world, this is where you should start.
Cool. Oh, there's a new question pop up. Since we use pathways, then can we apply those Figment in our projects?
Yeah, in terms of like the code, you can fork the code and sort of start building for your own project.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Absolutely. I'll also share this, Chris. One thing that we're doing is let me actually share my screen one more time. Sure. And I want to make sure that I get this out there for you guys. We're going to be launching this really cool contest later today. Actually, I'm actually already there, aren't I? Let's go here. We're going to be launching these contests today. So we've got a couple of contests going on, but we're going to be launching this Polygon tutorial contest later today, which is going to be a couple of different specs for different types of tutorials that we want help from the community in creating. And we're going to be judging those. And to the extent that you end up getting first, second, or third place, we're going to actually be giving those developers tokens, a couple $1,000 worth of tokens for each level, first, second, and third place. And so highly encourage you guys to keep up with us on Twitter today, because we'll be announcing that. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Wow, this is amazing. Yeah, let me check if there are some other questions. Yeah, I think that'll be it. And thank you very much for your sharing today. It's I believe this is really super helpful sessions for all of the audience, especially for all of the developers that want to jump into the Web3 world. And guys, just definitely go to check the Figment's contest on their website. You could get some Polygon tokens if you win. And yeah, I think that's it for today. And we will have we will have few workshops in the following days. And tomorrow we will have Renat Dependencies from actually Polygon with us and talking about how to build a lending protocol on Polygon. And welcome, Daniel, if you want to hear that, join us. And absolutely. If you haven't followed us on YouTube and Bilibili, make sure you do that so you won't miss out any of the upcoming workshops and amazing sessions in the future. And hope everyone doing well in the future on building the projects on Polygon networks. And good luck. And also, thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us today. And thank you very much for the amazing sharing of everything. And yeah, that's it for today. And thank you for your time and have a great one, Daniel.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.